I was polishing my truck when my son called to tell me I wasn't good enough to drive it. "Dad, quick favor," he said, voice smooth and hurried, the kind of tone you use when you've already decided something. "Emma's dad needs your Lightning for the wedding. His Escalade broke down, and well, your truck looks better for the photos. We'll send you an Uber instead." For a second, the rag in my hand froze mid-air. The morning sun hit the chrome of my Ford F-150 Lightning Platinum, and the reflection cut across my face like a blade. That truck was the only thing in my life that still looked brand new. I swallowed. "You're asking me to take an Uber so your father-in-law can ride my truck?" There was a pause, brief, careless. "Come on, Dad. Don't make this a big deal. It's just practical." Practical. That word landed heavier than any insult. Outside, the truck glowed like a quiet monument. I'd washed it that morning, wiped down every curve, every corner, the way a man prays without realizing it. The smell of wax still lingered in the air. I'd bought that Lightning a year ago, brand new electric blue full package. My retirement gift to myself after selling the garage I'd built with 40 years of grease blood and sunburn. My whole life fit under that hood. "Just one ride, huh?" I said, voice low. "One ride and a lifetime of respect gone with it." He sighed. "Dad, don't be dramatic. It's just a truck." I could hear laughter in the background, Emma's voice bright and young, then Marcus again, softer now, like he was soothing a stubborn child. "We'll pick it up this afternoon, all right?" "Thanks, Dad. Love you." The line went dead before I could answer. My name's Ben Coleman, and this isn't just a story about revenge. It's about what happens when a man finally decides his dignity costs more than his silence. If you're watching this right now, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where did you first hear my story? Because I've heard it's been spreading whispered in garages, kitchen tables, maybe even wedding halls, and I want to know how far the echo of a father's silence has reached. Now sit down. Let me tell you how one phone call, one single favor, turned a lifetime of love into the lesson of my life. Silence. Just me, the rag, and the soft hum of the charger cable running into the truck. Even the damn car was breathing quieter than I was. I looked at her, her. That Lightning wasn't a thing to me, it was a heartbeat. The way the LEDs glowed under the garage light felt almost alive. I called her Angela, same name as my late wife. Maybe that sounds foolish, but when you've buried the love of your life, you start talking to machines just to hear an echo. Angela had wanted me to retire early. "Live a little, Ben," she used to say. "You've fixed cars your whole life. Maybe it's time you drive one that doesn't leak oil." So I sold the shop, took half the money, and bought the best damn truck Ford ever built. Every time I touched that steering wheel, I felt like she was riding shotgun again, quiet proud, humming some old Motown tune under her breath. And now my son wanted to hand her over to some man who probably still called people like me sir, just to feel polite. I sat down on the stool by the workbench. The rag was still in my hand, damp with wax and sweat. You ever notice how betrayal never comes loud? It just slides in calm and tidy like a favor. Marcus was a good kid once. I taught him to ride his first bike, fixed his first flat tire, showed him how to read a dipstick. When he got into college, I worked weekends just so he'd never know what it cost. And now, at 32, he was marrying into a family that lived in neighborhoods where folks like me were invisible unless they were mowing lawns or fixing gutters. And he wanted my truck for them. The garage felt smaller all of a sudden. My hands, these cracked, oil-stained hands, trembled a little. I looked at them and thought, these hands built everything he stands on. The phone buzzed again, a text this time. "Thanks again, Dad. The limo's full. This makes everything easier. Easier." That's what people say right before they cut you out of their picture. I typed back, then erased it. I started to write, "No problem, son," then "I'm proud of you," then nothing at all. I put the phone down. The charger clicked off. The Lightning fully charged. Funny. The truck was full of power, and I'd never felt emptier. I stood there for a while, staring at the truck's reflection in the metal toolbox. Every inch of her was spotless, like she was ready for the day I wouldn't be part of. In the old days, when I used to fix engines for a living, I'd tell the young mechanics, Every machine tells you how it's feeling if you listen close enough. I swear to God, that morning the lightning looked back at me and whispered, "You've been replaced, old man." I walked around her slowly, fingertips trailing along the side panel. Not a scratch, not a dent. She was too perfect to hand over to a man who wouldn't even know how to appreciate torque. I thought about Angela again, the way she'd put her hand on my chest whenever I got angry. "You're better than your temper, Ben." But this wasn't about anger. It was grief. The kind of grief that comes when you realize you've raised someone to see you as optional. Outside, birds chirped. The street was waking up. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor's lawn sprinkler hissed. Life was carrying on, oblivious to the quiet implosion happening inside my chest. I sat down on the tailgate, the rag hanging from my hand like a flag of surrender. The scent of wax and dust mixed with something metallic, like the taste of regret. I looked at the empty passenger seat through the windshield and thought of every ride Angela and I had taken. That seat had carried laughter, arguments, grocery bags, hospital flowers. It had carried my whole damn marriage. Now it would carry Emma's dad. I don't know why that detail hit so hard. Maybe because Marcus had chosen another man's comfort over his father's dignity. Maybe because deep down every man fears the day his son stops seeing him as necessary. I whispered to the truck the way I used to whisper to Angela when the nights got rough. "Guess it's just you and me again, girl." The charger light blinked once like she was listening. When the Uber arrived that afternoon, a Prius rolled up, tiny, silent, efficient. The driver didn't even look me in the eye. "Benjamin Coleman." I nodded. Heading to the Whitmore estate, I didn't answer. Just climbed in, knees, stiff hands gripping the seatbelt like a lifeline. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of my Lightning parked in the driveway, shiny, proud, and waiting for someone else. A man in a gray suit stood beside it, sunglasses on, hair slicked back, the father of the bride. He ran his hand across the hood and smiled like he owned it. That image burned itself into my chest. I looked away before it could settle too deep. Halfway there, the Uber driver spoke up. "Nice truck, by the way. Yours, right?" I looked out the window. Was. He didn't ask anything else. When we stopped at a red light, I saw the Lightning in the next lane ahead of us, gliding smooth, the reflection of the wedding ribbons fluttering in the wind. For a second, I thought I saw Angela's face in the side mirror, calm, forgiving, proud. Then the light turned green, and she was gone. I didn't cry. Men like me don't cry over things we can't fix. We just stand there and rust quietly from the inside out. But that night, when the wedding music echoed faintly through my phone's live stream, I poured myself a drink, sat in the dark, and whispered to the silence. They say love drives everything. Maybe that's true, but respect is what keeps the damn wheels on. I raised my glass toward the window where the faint reflection of my Lightning shimmered under the streetlight. "Here's to you, Angela," I said softly. "One ride, huh? One ride, and a lifetime of respect gone with it." They say a man's hands tell his story. Mine read like a confession, cracked, blackened, full of sins committed in the name of love. That night after the call, I sat in the garage staring at my hands under the harsh white light. The wax still clung to my nails, mixed with old oil from a life I can't wash off. I flexed my fingers, slow, stiff. Each knuckle felt like a year that wouldn't bend anymore. The silence of the garage pressed down heavy and familiar. And in that silence, the past began to hum soft at first, like the idling of an engine that never really turned off. Flashback Detroit. Back then I was 30, broke, hungry, married to a woman whose heart was too fragile for the world we lived in. Angela worked at the diner 2 blocks down from the shop. Even when her chest hurt, she smiled like pain was just another customer she had to serve. I used to tell her, "You rest, I'll pick up the shifts," and she'd shake her head. "You pick up one more shift, Ben, and you'll disappear in there," but I did anyway, 12 hours a day under hoods that hissed like beasts, breathing fumes that stuck to my lungs. My clothes always smelled of gasoline and metal. Marcus was 5 too young to understand why his daddy was never home for dinner. Sometimes I'd come back so tired I'd fall asleep, sitting on the couch, grease on my hands, the TV murmuring infomercials into the dark. Marcus would crawl up next to me, tiny fingers tracing the scars on my palm. "Did it hurt, Dad?" "Only the first few times." He'd laugh, and that sound would wash away every ache. Those hands paid for every birthday candle he ever blew out. Flashback 2002. Marcus was 12 when I taught him to drive. We had this beat-up '89 Ford Ranger, the paint flaking off like bad sunburn. He could barely reach the pedals, but he was eager, wide-eyed. I remember his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his foot jerking on the brake. "Easy," I said. "You don't fight the machines, son. You learn to listen to it." He frowned, sweating. "What if it doesn't listen back?" I smiled. "Respect the machine, and it'll respect you back." That was our rule: respect. The road, the engine, the people who came before you. It wasn't about cars. It was about life. Flashback Hospital 2008. Angela's heart finally gave out one September morning. The machines around her beeped in a rhythm I'd spent my whole life chasing. Before she went, she reached for my hand, these same hands, and whispered, "Make him a man who knows where he came from." I promised her I would. I promised like a man promises God before breaking down. And after that I worked harder. Not smarter, not happier, just harder. I fixed engines, not people. I learned every sound an engine could make, but missed the silence growing in my son. Present. The charger light blinked on the Lightning 2023, and I realized how far I'd come, or maybe how far I'd gone without moving at all. When Ford announced the electric Lightning, I laughed. An electric truck, hell, that's like a preacher with no voice. But the first time I saw one glide down Jefferson Avenue, silent silver, graceful, it felt like hope. Like proof an old machine could be reborn without losing its strength. So when I sold the garage last year, I took half the check and bought one. Platinum edition. Every option. Heated seats, 18-speaker sound system, panoramic sunroof. I told myself it was practical, but deep down I knew it was my monument. My goodbye to Greece, to labor, to every version of me that broke his back for other people's engines. And I named her Angela because she didn't make a sound but carried power you could feel in your bones. Just like my wife. Some nights I'd sit inside the truck, no destination, just the hum of electricity beneath my feet. The dashboard lights would glow blue across my hands, clean for once, and I'd imagine her sitting beside me again, not sick, not tired, just there. I'd whisper, "You'd love this one, baby. She doesn't even need gas." And in that silence I could almost hear her laugh. That truck wasn't just transportation, it was resurrection. So when Marcus called it just practical, he wasn't just taking a vehicle. He was taking the last piece of my faith, that work and love meant something in this world. I went over to the wall where my old tools still hung. Wrenches, sockets, torque keys, a whole life lined up in rusted order. My hands drifted over them like a priest touching relics. Every scar on my palms matched a tool on that wall. When I opened the drawer, the smell of oil hit me like a ghost. It wasn't unpleasant, it was home. There's a comfort in grime. Dirt tells you that you mattered once, that you touched the world and left fingerprints deep enough to stain. I leaned against the workbench, staring at my reflection in the shiny metal of the Lightning's door. My face looked older than I remembered. Not because of time, because of effort. I thought of Marcus as a boy, the way he used to stand next to me, holding a wrench twice his size, mimicking every move I made. He'd smile when the engine roared back to life, proud like he'd built it himself. Then I thought of him now, the clean suits, the watch, the way he says "Dad," like it's a polite formality. Somewhere along the way, the son I raised to respect the machine stopped respecting the man who taught him how. The garage clock ticked slow and cruel. Midnight. I hadn't moved in hours. I walked over to the truck again, ran my palm across the hood, feeling the faint warmth of the battery underneath. "You're the only thing in this house that still calls me sir," I whispered. The reflection of my hand lay across the polished metal. Every scar, every burn mark, every cut proof of the things I'd built and the people I'd loved. My whole life was etched into these palms. The house, the boy, the business, even the wife, all carved from calluses. And now those same hands couldn't hold on to any of it. I sat down inside the truck, turned on the cabin light. The leather smelled new, untouched. The screens glowed softly, futuristic and quiet. This machine was everything I'd worked for, efficient, clean, perfect, the opposite of me. For a moment I imagined Marcus behind the wheel, his father-in-law beside him smiling for pictures, their laughter echoing where my silence used to sit. It wasn't jealousy, it was erasure. When a man loses what he's built, he rebuilds. But when a man loses what he is, there's nothing left to fix. I started the truck. The dash lit up in electric blue, the motor humming so softly it felt like breathing. I placed both hands on the wheel, fingers spread like I was holding time itself, and I said out loud, maybe to Angela, maybe to myself, I've spent my life fixing things that were broken. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to fix what doesn't want fixing. The words hung there heavy and final. Outside rain began to fall, slow at first, then steady. Drops streaked down the windshield, catching the reflection of the blue lights, turning the glass into a sheet of trembling tears. I sat there until the charger beeped, signaling full power. Funny thing, I thought, this truck will outlive me, silent, spotless, respected. While I, the man who built his whole world with his hands, was already running out of charge. The Uber smelled like new plastic in someone else's life. I sat in the back seat, too tight around the neck, watching my own truck glide ahead of us like it belonged to a better man. The Ford F-150 Lightning silver skin gleaming under the Michigan sun ribbons tied across the hood. The father of the bride, Richard Whitmore, tall tan blue suit, the color of entitlement, was in the passenger seat. His hand rested easy on the window frame, a gold watch flashing like a signal to anyone looking. He's the one in charge. I had waxed that truck yesterday. Now it was part of someone else's story. The Uber driver kept stealing glances in the rearview mirror. Maybe he wondered why a man like me was dressed for a wedding, but riding in the back of a compact hybrid. Maybe he didn't wonder at all. People don't look long at men who remind them of work. We slowed at a red light. Up ahead, Richard stepped out of my truck, waved to a cluster of photographers, the doors opening wide like a ceremony of wealth. He smiled, gestured for his wife to join him. Flashbulbs burst, the crowd clapped, and I sat in a car that didn't even rumble when it moved. Nice ride, the driver said, nodding toward the Lightning. That the new electric one, I didn't answer. He didn't ask again. The wedding was held at the Whitmore estate, a lakefront mansion that looked like it had never met a mortgage. Strings of lights, manicured lawns, crystal vases taller than a man's hope. People moved like perfume, expensive, invisible, designed to linger just long enough. A young woman with an earpiece and clipboard smiled at me the way staff smile when they don't know where to put you. Mr. Coleman. Right? You're, table 17. I followed her gesture. The far corner, near the kitchen doors. I laughed once short to myself. Table 17, the number of years I worked overtime to send Marcus to college. Fitting. Inside the tent, violins floated over the murmur of polite conversation. The air smelled of champagne and imported flowers. I caught sight of my son at the front, black tux, nervous grin, looking every inch the successful man I'd hoped he'd become. For a second, pride cracked through the bitterness. Then he turned toward the Whitmores. Emma's mother, Clarissa, elegant in pastel silk, placed a hand on his cheek, as if she'd known him his whole life. The photographers circled them like bees around sugar. I was a ghost in my own bloodline. A waiter brushed past, nearly knocking my elbow. Sorry, sir. No harm done, I said, though a drop of red wine bled onto my sleeve. When the ceremony started, I watched from my seat near the back. The sun cut through the white canopy, catching the reflection off the Lightning parked by the entrance. It shone brighter than anything here, but no one looked. Vows, applause, kisses. I clapped when everyone clapped, smiled when they smiled. That's what fathers do. They fill the silence with obedience. Afterward, during the reception, I wandered through tables until I found mine. Table 17, Friends of the Family. The name card said Benjamin Coleman in small type printed wrong, Benjamin. I didn't correct it. At the head table, Clarissa and her husband sat beside Marcus and Emma, laughing at some private joke. The chandeliers above them cast a soft light, warm, forgiving. Down where I sat, the bulbs flickered once and buzzed. Dinner was lamb pink and tender. I chewed without tasting, nodding to conversations I wasn't part of. The couple beside me, Emma's old professor and his wife, spoke about travel vineyards, art galleries. One of them asked, "So Ben, what do you do?" Did I correct it? "I fix cars." "Oh," she said, polite smile faltering just enough to register. "That's noble work," was I almost said. But I let it die there. Then came the speeches. Marcus took the microphone, cleared his throat. "Thank you all for being here today. This day is everything Emma and I dreamed of." He looked at her, eyes soft. I almost smiled again, but then he continued. "I want to take a moment to thank the two strongest women in my life, my beautiful wife Emma and her incredible mother, Clarissa." Applause, laughter, no mention of his father, not even a glance toward the corner of the tent where I sat with my half-empty glass. I lifted it anyway, a silent toast no one saw. My hand trembled. The wine rippled in the crystal like a pulse trying to escape. For the first time that day, I didn't feel angry, just empty. The kind of empty that doesn't echo, it just absorbs sound. The music picked up. Couples drifted to the dance floor. I stayed seated watching Marcus dance with Clarissa first, an old tradition, someone said, the mother of honor. Their steps were smooth, practiced, graceful. When the song ended, I expected him to turn to call for me the way a boy once had when learning to walk. He didn't. The next song began without pause. Later, when the plates were cleared and the laughter blurred into background noise, I slipped outside for air. The night smelled of lake water and lilacs. Crickets chirped. The world was peaceful in a way that mocked me. The lightning sat under the lights near the valet stand, ribbons still trailing. The front tire was splattered with mud. A faint scuff marred the chrome of the door handle. I stepped closer, running my thumb along the mark. A man's boot print, size 11 maybe. Not mine. "They even left fingerprints on her," I murmured. The valet glanced up, curious. "Sir, nothing," I said. "She's just not used to strangers." He smiled, not understanding, and went back to scrolling his phone. From inside the tent came the sound of Marcus's laughter, high and effortless. I hadn't heard that laugh in years. It should have made me proud. Instead, it hollowed me out. I thought of Angela again, the promise I made her in that hospital room. Raise him right. Make him a man who knows where he came from. Maybe I had. Maybe that's why he left me behind, because he knew exactly where he came from, and he didn't want to go back. The moonlight glinted off the truck's body, blue reflections, sliding over the smooth metal like ghosts of every hour I'd worked to afford it. 100,000 miles of my life compressed into one shining monument. I leaned against the bed of the truck, hands in my pockets, listening to the muffled music inside. My wedding ring, still on my finger all these years later, caught the light and winked once before disappearing back into shadow. Somewhere behind me, Marcus was giving another speech. The crowd cheered. I didn't turn around. I whispered to the truck, my voice barely louder than the wind off the lake, "You and me, girl. We built everything he's standing on. And tonight, he's dancing on top of it." I pressed my hand flat against the cold metal, feeling for a heartbeat that wasn't there. Then I walked away, leaving the fingerprints myself. The night after the wedding, I came home to silence so thick it felt like another presence in the house. No music, no laughter, not even the hum of the fridge. Just me, the ticking wall clock, and the faint electric pulse of the lightning charging outside. I hung my jacket, still smelling of champagne and someone else's happiness, and went straight to the kitchen table. That's where I'd left the folder, the one marked Marcus and Emma wedding expenses. Receipts, invoices, bank statements. Each one was a small confession written in numbers. $18,000 already paid, $7,000 still due. The balance due glared up at me like a dare. I sat there a long while staring at the figure. $7,000. Not much, really. I'd spent more than that fixing other people's mistakes. But this one wasn't mechanical. It was moral. I picked up my pen ready to sign the final transfer. My hand froze midair. Something inside me shifted small at first like a screw tightening, then louder, heavier like the click of a wrench finding the right fit. I set the pen down. Then I laughed. Quiet, bitter, hollow. I paid for my own humiliation. The words hung in the air, sharp as metal. And then they turned into fuel. I opened the laptop, logged into my bank account. The cursor blinked in the scheduled payments box, one last transaction pending for the Whitmore Catering Company. Click, cancel, confirm. A warning message popped up. Are you sure you want to stop this payment? Damn right I'm sure. The screen went blank for a second, then refreshed. Payment canceled, balance unchanged. For the first time in a long time, I felt something steady under my ribs. Not joy, not anger, power, the quiet kind. The kind men like me aren't supposed to claim. Next call was to the bank. A young voice answered, cheerful and plastic. Good evening, Mr. Coleman. How can I assist you tonight? Need to stop an automatic transfer, I said. Effective immediately. Certainly. May I ask the reason? Because I've had enough. A pause. I could hear her typing. Enough. Of what, sir? I smiled without meaning to. Of being generous to people who mistake it for weakness. She hesitated again, then, in the clipped politeness of someone under training, said, Understood. The recurring payment has been canceled. Good, I said. Let's keep it that way. Then came the harder call, Dwight, the man who ran the wedding venue. He'd been polite when we first met, the way people are when they think your money spends the same as everyone else's. I scrolled to his number, pressed call. He picked up on the second ring, voice smooth with satisfaction. Mr. Coleman, great to hear from you. The event went beautifully, didn't it? For some, I said. He chuckled, missing the tone completely. Now about that remaining balance. Stop right there, I interrupted. The contract's under both names, mine and my son's. That means responsibilities shared, correct? Technically, yes, but you... Then let my son finish what he started. Silence. I could almost hear his posture change. Sir, with all due respect. With all due respect, I cut in again. I've already given enough. You'll get your money, just not from me. He exhaled sharply through the phone, that small puff of frustration I've heard from 1,000 customers who thought they could talk a mechanic into guilt. All right, Mr. Coleman, he said finally. We'll contact your son. Good idea, I said. He's better with speeches than payments. I ended the call before he could reply. For a long minute I just sat there, phone still in my hand, heartbeats syncing with the quiet hum from outside. Through the window, I could see the lightning on its charger taillights pulsing red every few seconds like a heartbeat. The house was dim lit only by the faint blue glow leaking in from the driveway. The charger's soft whir filled the air. That sound, smooth, steady, felt like forgiveness. Not from Marcus, not from anyone, from myself. I'd spent years believing silence was the same as peace. It wasn't. Silence is just what's left when you've been ignored long enough. But tonight's silence was different. It had weight. It belonged to me. I went to the garage, opened the door. The cool night air drifted in, carrying the smell of rain and distant traffic. The lightning stood there like a sentinel, chrome skin reflecting bits of starlight, charging cable curled like a lifeline. I reached out, ran a hand across the hood. The metal was warm, alive. I could feel the thrum of current beneath it, quiet and constant, like the heart of something that never needed thanks.
You and me, girl, I said softly. We're done paying for things that break us. The charger clicked once, a clean, precise sound, and the LED ring turned green, full. I leaned against the truck, exhaling slow. The sound of it filled the space, low and steady, blending with the faint electric hum. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath.
I thought of Marcus again, his laughter, the way he toasted the two strongest women in my life. He hadn't meant to hurt me. That's what made it worse. Neglect always sounds like reason when it comes from someone you love. But this wasn't revenge. It was correction. A line drawn not in anger, but in the quiet ink of dignity. I walked back inside, poured a glass of whiskey, no ice. Sat down at the table folder still open in front of me. I tore the remaining invoice in half, then again until the numbers disappeared into paper dust. Each rip sounded like a gear unclenching. The night stretched long. Outside, the rain began again, soft against the windows. The lightning's charger beeped once more, signaling what I already knew: it was fully charged, ready to move. I took a sip of whiskey, eyes fixed on the dark glass of the window, where the reflection of the truck glowed faintly. It looked almost human in that light, patient waiting, loyal. Maybe more loyal than anything else in my life had been. I whispered, "You and me, Angela. We've done our time." The whiskey burned down my throat, clean and final. And for the first time since that phone call, I felt something shift inside me. A click, a release, the sound a bolt makes when it slides into place. Freedom, not loud or dramatic, just real. I turned off the lights, leaving only the blue halo from the charger pulsing through the window. In that half-dark, the house breathed again, and for the first time in years, so did I. The phone rang just after sunset, sharp, impatient, the way a knock sounds when it's not asking permission. The screen flashed Marcus. I knew it would come. Pride always calls back, but never to apologize. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey, Dad?" Marcus started, voice tight, practiced calm, masking anger. "We just got a call from Dwight at the venue. He said you told him to contact me for the remaining balance. What the hell is going on?" Outside, the wind brushed against the windows, a low whistle through the eaves. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, watching the last glow of dusk fade across the hood of the Lightning parked in the driveway. "What's going on," I said slowly, "is that I stopped paying for things that make me smaller." He sighed, that long, exasperated exhale only sons seem to perfect when they believe they've outgrown their fathers. "Dad, this isn't about pride. This is about responsibility. You signed the contract. You can't just—" "I can," I said. And I did. "Do you realize how this looks? Dwight's calling me in Hawaii saying my father refused to pay. Emma's parents are furious. You're embarrassing me." His words hit their mark, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. "You're embarrassing me, not. You hurt me." Embarrassment meant image. I'd raised a man who feared judgment more than injustice. "You embarrass both of us, son," I said quietly. There was a pause, just breathing. Ocean sounds faint behind him, waves hissing like static. "What are you talking about?" "The day you sent me that Uber, I said you told me exactly where I belong in your life. Behind the car you borrowed, behind the people you're trying to impress, behind the mother-in-law who got my seat at your wedding." "Dad, that's not fair." "Fair," I laughed once, dry and without humor. "You think this is about fair? I'm not punishing you, Marcus. I'm teaching you what it feels like when a man stands up for his own worth." He went silent long enough for me to hear the hotel air conditioning hum through the receiver. "So you're cutting me off," he said finally, voice dropping an octave, the mix of wounded and incredulous. "No," I said. "I'm cutting myself free." Another silence, heavier this time, the kind that builds a wall instead of a bridge. "You could have just talked to me," he said, quieter now. "You didn't have to make it dramatic." "I tried talking for 40 years, I said. All you heard was background noise." "Dad, Marcus." I interrupted, soft but firm. "You're a good man, but you don't become a better one by letting others carry the cost of your comfort. It's time you learn that." The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the windows. His breathing filled the line, quick, shallow, the sound of pride trying to swallow guilt. "I don't know what to say," he muttered. "Then don't," I said. "Actions'll do." He didn't hang up right away. Neither did I. For a moment, the silence between us felt almost sacred, the kind of silence that comes when two people finally stop pretending they understand each other. Then he said very softly, "Emma says, I'm just like you." "No," I answered. "You're still learning what that means." And I ended the call. The house was dark except for the pulse of blue light coming from the garage, steady, quiet, alive. I walked toward it. Each step measured the weight of the call, sinking but not crushing. The air smelled faintly of rain and metal, the scent of endings that make room for something new. Inside, the F-150 Lightning waited gleaming under the single hanging bulb. I slid into the driver's seat. The leather groaned softly familiar. My reflection stared back from the touchscreen, older yes, but clear-eyed for once. I rested both hands on the steering wheel, fingers tracing the embossed stitching. The cabin lights flared blue, washing over my face, the same color as calm water before a storm. I whispered to her the way I used to whisper to my wife back when the world still felt fixable. "You're still mine, girl. You're the only thing that ever called me, sir." Outside, the Charger hummed like a distant heartbeat. Inside, I let the silence settle again, this time not as emptiness, but as ownership. Not over the truck, not over Marcus, over myself. The next morning, the world was too quiet. Detroit after rain always looks like it's holding its breath. Puddles in the cracked asphalt, reflections of gray sky trembling in everyone. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it accuses. I drove to the cemetery just outside town. Didn't take the Lightning. I walked. It's only a mile from my house, but that mile felt longer than the 40 years between the man I was and the man I'd become. Angela's headstone sat beneath an old oak. Time had softened the marble moss growing at the edges like a slow forgiveness. I wiped it clean with my sleeve out of habit, the way you'd fix something that doesn't even need fixing. "Morning, sweetheart," I said. My voice came out rougher than I expected. It's been a hell of a week. The wind pushed through the trees, carrying the faint hum of traffic from the freeway. I stared down at her name, Angela Marie Coleman, 1963 to 2017. Underneath the words I'd chosen, she taught with her hands and loved with her silence. I crouched down, resting my hand on the cool stone. "I tried to raise him right," I said quietly. "Worked hard, stayed clean, kept my promises. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I raised him comfortable instead." A crow cawed somewhere overhead, cutting through the stillness. I thought about Marcus, the way he laughed at that wedding, the way he used to look at me when he was little, eyes full of questions and trust. Now those same eyes looked at me like I was a relic. Something useful once, but outdated now. I sighed. "You'd probably tell me to let it go. You were always better at that." The clouds above shifted, sun breaking through for half a second, enough to make the marble glow. It was the same glow the Lightning gave off when it charged at night. Cold light, clean and endless. Angela used to say electricity was God's handwriting. Maybe she was right. I stayed until my knees started to ache. On the way back, I stopped by the small grocery store on 8th Street. Needed milk. Didn't really need milk, just needed to see people moving, talking, doing things that made sense. That's where I ran into Ruby Johnson. Ruby lived 2 houses down, a widow like me. 70 maybe, but carried herself like she was 60. Always wore those big round earrings that caught the sunlight like tiny mirrors. "Ben Coleman," she said, spotting me in the produce aisle, "you look like a man trying to fix something that ain't broke." I smiled a little. Maybe it's just me that's broke. She gave me that look, half pity, half steel. "Boy, you're too old to be talking like a man who just discovered pain." "Didn't discover it," I said, "just finally stopped ignoring it." She leaned on her cart, nodding slowly. "Heard about what happened with your boy. Folks talk. You know how they do. Let them," I said. "I'm done defending myself." Ruby chuckled low, shaking her head. "That's good. That's real good. Took me 10 years after my husband passed to learn that trick." I picked up a carton of milk, turned it in my hands. "How'd you do it? Learn to stop defending myself. Learn to stop drowning in the things you can't fix." She smiled, slow and knowing. "Oh, baby, you don't stop drowning. You just learn how to float." I laughed, the first honest laugh I'd let out in days. "That easy, huh?" "Hell no," she said. "Sometimes you gotta let go of the folks you love, let the water take 'em a bit. You can't teach nobody to swim if you keep holding their damn hand." Her voice softened. "Sometimes love ain't about holding on, baby. It's about letting go so they know how to swim." The words hit me like a wrench dropped on a concrete floor, loud, final, undeniable. Ruby turned her cart, ready to move on. "You remember that," she said, tapping her temple. "Ain't no shame in saving yourself first." I stood there in the middle of the aisle, milk in one hand, her words in the other, both heavier than they should have been. That night I couldn't sleep. The house felt smaller, tighter. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the charger outside seemed to ask the same question. What are you holding on to? Ben. I sat in the dark for a while thinking about Marcus, about Angela, about the years I'd spent trying to be the man everyone needed instead of the man I actually was. Maybe Ruby was right. Maybe letting go wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was the truest kind of love left to give. Outside, thunder rolled far off, the kind of sound that doesn't scare you anymore, just reminds you the world's still moving. I poured myself a drink, sat by the window, and whispered to the night, "He'll learn. One way or another, and when he does, maybe he'll swim back." The storm moved closer, rain starting to fall against the glass, soft, rhythmic, forgiving. I closed my eyes and listened. I knew the day would come. You can feel confrontation long before it knocks like thunder. You can smell before it rolls. That morning, the air itself felt heavier, the kind that tells you someone's coming to collect a debt of pride. I was in the garage wiping dust off the Lightning's hood when I heard the tires screech outside. Marcus's black rental pulled up hard, door slamming before the engine even died. Emma followed behind him, slower. Eyes full of apology she hadn't spoken yet. He came at me fast. "Dad," he barked, "we just got back from Hawaii and Dwight's threatening legal action. You can't just back out of a deal." I didn't move, just kept polishing the chrome trim until I could see his reflection clear as mine. "I didn't back out of a deal," I said quietly. "I backed out of disrespect." "That's not how the world works." His voice cracked on the edge of anger and disbelief. "You signed the contract, you owe him." I turned, reached into the top drawer of my tool chest and pulled out a manila envelope, creased, worn, deliberate. I handed it to him. "Take a good look," I said. "That's your signature, not mine." He snatched the papers, flipping through them, scanning fast the way a man does when he's looking for a loophole instead of the truth. His mouth opened, then shut. He stared down at the page like it had betrayed him. Emma stepped forward, voice low. "Marcus," she said softly, "he's right. The contract lists both of you. You signed for the second half." Marcus turned to her, eyes wide. "You're taking his side now. I'm taking the side that's true," she said, calm but firm. "Your father doesn't owe us, Marcus. We owe him." Her words landed like a door closing somewhere deep in the house. Marcus's shoulders dropped, but his pride kept his chin high. "I just wanted the day to be perfect," he muttered. "That's all I was trying to do." I nodded slowly. "And you made it perfect, son, for everyone but your mother and me." He flinched just slightly. Sometimes quiet truth cuts deeper than shouting ever could. For a long minute no one spoke. Emma looked around the garage. The old wrenches hung in order, the oil-stained rags folded, the smell of metal and history everywhere. You could tell she was seeing it for the first time, not a workshop, but a shrine to everything her husband took for granted. "Mr. Coleman," she said softly, "I didn't understand before. I do now. I'm sorry." I nodded. "You weren't the one who needed to." Marcus bristled. "Don't put this all on me. You think it's easy trying to build something new when you came from nothing." I met his eyes, steady even. "Son, I came from nothing. You came from me. There's a difference." He started to speak, then stopped. His breath hitched. I could see the boy he used to be, the one who looked up to me when I taught him how to hold a wrench, how to fix what was broken. But this wasn't something he could repair with tools. He looked down at the contract again, then back at me. "So that's it. You're really cutting me off." I shook my head. "No, Marcus. I'm cutting you loose." He stared like he didn't understand the language I was speaking. "You don't mean that." "I do, because if I don't, you'll never stand on your own, and I'll keep sinking trying to hold you up." The words hit the air between us like the smell of burned rubber, sharp, irreversible. Emma reached for his hand, but he pulled away. His pride was louder than reason. "You've changed," he said finally. Maybe I replied. Or maybe I just stopped mistaking silence for love.
He looked around the garage again at the lightning, at the framed photo of Angela on the wall, smiling in the background of an old barbecue shot, and something in him softened, but not enough to break. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaled hard. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I know I said. But good intentions don't make good sons. Respect does."
I stepped closer just enough that he had to meet my eyes. "Respect isn't inherited, son," I said. "It's returned." The words hung there heavier than any tool in that room. He didn't answer, just stood there, chest rising and falling, jaw working like he wanted to fight and couldn't find the words. Emma touched his arm lightly. "Marcus," she whispered, "let's go." He hesitated, then nodded once, a quick, silent surrender. They turned and walked toward the door. When it shut behind them, it didn't slam. It closed slow, deliberate, with that hollow sound old wood makes when it seals two worlds apart. The sound echoed through the garage long after they'd gone, the sound of separation, of one life ending quietly, while another suddenly began. I stood there for a while, hands resting on the hood of the lightning, feeling the cold metal steady under my palms. Outside, the sky was the color of steel before a storm. Inside, I'd never felt calmer. Spring came quiet that year, like the world was trying not to wake me too fast. The snow melted slow, one driveway at a time, and the first thing that thawed wasn't the ground. It was me. I didn't plan it. I just woke up one morning, poured a cup of black coffee, and looked around the garage that used to be my refuge. The place smelled like dust and oil and endings, but through the half-open door the morning light hit the lightning's chrome, scattering blue across the wall like a stained glass window. For the first time, that light didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a promise. The next week I hung a hand-painted sign above the bay door, "Coleman's Hands, Community Auto Workshop, free lessons for local youth." It wasn't much: a new coat of paint, a few donated tools, a second-hand coffee maker that hissed like it had opinions, but it was alive. Kids from the neighborhood started showing up after school. Most of them barely knew which end of a wrench to hold, but their eyes had the same hunger mine once did, that need to belong somewhere useful. All right, I'd tell them, tapping the hood of an old Corolla, "First thing you learn isn't fixing the car, it's respecting it. The rest comes later." Ruby was the one who pushed me to make it official. "You got something good here, baby," she said, leaning against the doorframe in her Sunday hat and two bright earrings. "You helping these kids? That's ministry work." "I'm no preacher," I said, "just trying to keep 'em off the streets." She smiled. "Then you're preaching better than most." With her help, we filled out paperwork, argued with city clerks, and finally got the garage listed as a community nonprofit. Every time I signed my name on a form, it felt like I was erasing another piece of the man who used to wait for a son's approval. There was one boy, Devin, 14, smart mouth, quicker hands. His father was serving time, his mother worked nights. First day, he showed up late chewing gum, daring me to yell. I didn't. I just handed him a ratchet and said, "Show me what you can do." He stripped a bolt in 5 minutes flat, cursed under his breath, waited for me to snap. I didn't. I showed him how to grip the handle, how to feel the tension before it gives. He looked at me different after that, like maybe patience was another kind of strength. By summer, that boy could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded. Every Friday he'd slap my shoulder and say, "You're all right, old man." And every Friday I'd grin like a fool, because hearing that from a kid who'd never trusted anyone before, that was church. One afternoon, Ruby stopped by with sweet tea and paperwork. "Smile for the newsletter," she said, snapping a photo of me surrounded by kids, hands, greasy faces, proud. I groaned. "You trying to make me famous?" She laughed. "Famous, no. Useful, absolutely." She caught me later that day staring at my reflection in the lightning's window razor in one hand. "Finally gonna clean up that mountain man look," she teased. "Guess it's time," I said. The razor buzzed to life, its hum matching the soft electric murmur of the truck. Strands of gray fell into the sink light as dust. When I was done, I barely recognized the man in the mirror, face leaner, eyes clearer, denim shirt crisp and tucked for once. The morning sun spilled through the garage window, hitting the lightning's emblem on the wall, the blue glow cutting across my chest like a badge. I don't fix cars anymore, I said quietly. I fix people. Ruby grinned. Well, look at you, Pastor Coleman. Weeks passed. The workshop grew louder, busier, alive. Kids came and went, bringing engines that coughed, bikes that rattled, hopes that barely started. I taught them how to listen to the sound of a loose belt, to each other, to themselves. At night, when the lights went off, I'd sit in the driver's seat of the Lightning, let the cabin glow wash over me. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was earned. Then one evening, while locking up, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hawaii area code. For a moment I almost didn't answer, but some habits die slow. Dad Marcus. His voice softer than I remembered, hesitant, stripped of armor. Yeah, I said. There was a pause, just the sound of him breathing. Then Emma's pregnant. The words hung there, small and enormous at the same time. Is that right? I said finally. Yeah, he said, exhaling. It's a girl. I leaned against the Lightning, feeling the hum of its battery through my spine. The sky outside was orange, streaked with purple, the kind of color Angela used to stop and stare at like it was proof of something divine. I smiled just a little, not wide, not grand, just enough to let the warmth settle where it belonged. Let's see if they've learned anything. Marcus laughed softly, maybe not catching the full meaning, maybe catching all of it. We said goodbye without promises, without apologies. Just a simple see you soon. After I hung up, I walked to the open door. The night air smelled of oil and cut grass and rain far away. The kids had gone home hours ago, but their laughter still echoed between the walls. The Lightning's charger blinked once, that calm blue pulse I'd come to trust. I rested a hand on the hood, feeling it steady beneath my palm. Angela's name still lingered on the license plate frame. I whispered, "You see that, baby? Maybe the boy's finally learning how to swim." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anyone to come home. It was early autumn when the call came, the kind of morning where the air smells like rust and new beginnings. I was in the garage, the kids gone for the weekend, the radio low, some old Sam Cooke track humming beneath the hum of the Lightning charger. The silence felt honest, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. The phone buzzed on the workbench. Marcus. For a second, I just looked at the name, that simple word that had once meant everything I'd built and everything I'd lost. I answered. His voice was different, not sharp, not hurried, just human. "Dad," he said quietly, "it's a girl. We're naming her Angela." The wrench slipped in my hand and clanged onto the concrete. The sound echoed through the garage like a gunshot. For a long moment, I didn't say a thing. The air between us felt like a bridge, half-built, fragile, waiting to see who'd step first. Finally, I found the words. "Names are promises, son. Don't break this one." He exhaled, shaky, small, the kind of breath a man takes when he realizes he's finally facing himself. "I won't," he said. "I promise." Weeks passed. Leaves turned the color of copper. The garage kept me busy, but the quiet hours between classes had a new rhythm to them, softer, expectant. Then one evening, as I was locking up, Marcus called again. His voice was tight this time, different kind of quiet. "Dad," he said, "I lost my job." I leaned against the doorframe. "That happened before or after the baby news?" "After," he said. "The company downsized. Emma's hours got cut too." We're trying, but," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I knew that tone, the one that tastes like pride swallowed too late. "I don't know what to do," he said. "Can you—" I stopped him gently. "Don't ask for money, son. I wasn't going to." "Yes, you were." Silence. Then a soft laugh, tired but real. "Guess I was." "Good," I said. "That's the first honest thing you've said today." He waited. I could almost hear him wondering if I'd change my mind, if this was the part where I'd step in, rescue him like before. Instead, I walked over to the old wooden cabinet in the corner, the one that still smelled faintly of gasoline and time. I opened it, reached in, and pulled out a weathered tool bag. The leather was cracked, the handle frayed, but the tools inside still gleamed like they remembered being used for something noble. I set the phone on speaker, unzipped the bag. "You still got that apartment garage?" "Yeah," he said slowly. "Why, I'm shipping you something tomorrow. My old kit." He was quiet. Dad, I don't. You will, I said. If you need to fix your life, start with your own hands. I could almost hear his throat tighten. Dad, why are you doing this? Because that's what my father should have done for me, I said simply. Give me tools, not a rescue. He didn't answer. But I heard it in the silence, the small, breaking sound of understanding. A few days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No note, no words, just a photograph. It was a sonogram, tiny blur of life floating in black and white. On the back, written in Marcus's handwriting, "She's real, Dad. I hope one day you'll meet her." I held that picture longer than I meant to. The paper was thin, almost weightless, but it carried more than any invoice, any contract, any apology ever could. I went to the corkboard by my workbench, the one cluttered with sketches, student photos, faded receipts. I pinned the image right in the center under a grease-smudged note that read, "Respect the machine, and it'll respect you back." For a long time, I just stood there looking at the two together, the creed and the proof. Then I smiled, small and sure. The radio crackled, switching to a gospel station by accident. A choir swelled low and steady through the speakers. I whispered to no one, to everyone, "Welcome home, little Angela." Outside, the Lightning's headlights flickered on automatically, a soft blue glow filling the garage. For a second, it felt like the whole place was breathing again. 2 years later, Geese had a sound, the slow lap of waves against the dock on Lake Erie, the hum of bees in Ruby's garden, the quiet creak of my chair as I sat watching the light change over the water. I'd moved here a year after the garage turned into something bigger than me. The kids I used to teach were teaching others now. The sign over the door read, "Coleman's Hands Community Workshop." And every dented fender or broken bike that came through those doors left fixed, not perfect, but whole. That's all I ever wanted for anyone. I still woke early, though I didn't have to. Old habits. I'd make coffee, step outside, and listen to the gulls screaming over the water. Out back, Ruby was usually tending her garden, bright rows of tomatoes and wildflowers. She'd wave her trowel like a scepter commanding her tiny kingdom. "You ever gonna take a day off, preacher?" she'd yell. "I'm retired," I'd yell back. She'd laugh. "Retired don't mean resting, baby. It means choosing what breaks your back." That woman had a sermon for everything. It was late afternoon when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A black SUV, newer than the one Marcus used to drive, but still modest, pulled up in front of the house. The door opened and he stepped out. He looked different, not richer, not poorer, just real. The kind of man who's finally done pretending to be one. And in his arms, she was there, a little girl, curls, wild eyes too big for her face. "Angela." "Dad," he said. We were nearby, thought we'd stop by. I didn't answer right away, just nodded toward the porch. "Bring her over. She's got work to do." He laughed, unsure, and followed me to the backyard where my old tool chest sat open. The smell of motor oil and soil mixed in the air, something honest, something earned. Angela wriggled down from his arms and toddled straight toward the workbench. She reached out tiny fingers, grazing the cold steel of a wrench. "Careful," Marcus said quickly. I shook my head. "Let her touch it. She's got good instincts." She turned toward me, curious, fearless eyes like her grandmother's. I held out my hand. She came closer, placed her little palm against mine. Her skin was soft against the map of scars and grease stains that had built a lifetime. "She loves engines already," Marcus said, smiling. I grinned back, slow and warm. "Good. Then she'll understand how to keep one running and when to let one rest." We sat on the porch after that, watching her chase a butterfly through Ruby's garden. Marcus handed me a folded piece of paper, a flyer for a new auto shop. "Got a place opening downtown," he said. "Use that old toolkit you sent. Fixed up cars until I could save enough to rent a space." I turned the paper over, saw the name at the top, Angela's Garage. Honest work, honest hands. Couldn't help but chuckle. "You really want to jinx yourself naming a shop after me?" He smiled, sheepish. "Not you, Mom. She earned it." I nodded. "She did." Then he hesitated, eyes lowering. "Dad, I never said it right before, but don't I said gently. He shook his head. No, I need to. His voice broke a little. I didn't know respect could sound like silence. I looked at him, then at the girl in the garden sunlight, catching her hair like fire. Now you do, I said. We stayed like that for a while, saying nothing. The lake shimmered gold, the day fading, but not gone. Ruby brought out lemonade, handed one to Marcus, winked at me. Family looks good on you again, she said, and disappeared back into her flowers. Marcus packed up near dusk. Before he left, he hugged me, the kind of hug between two men who finally stopped keeping score. He whispered, "Thank you, for what I asked, for not giving up." I smiled. That's the one thing I never learned how to do. After they drove off, I walked back to the garage. The lightning sat in the yard spotless, even under the dust of time, the sunset laying a line of gold across its hood. It looked exactly as it had that first day, strong, quiet, patient. I leaned against it, the metal still warm from the sun, and closed my eyes. Voiceover. If there'd been one, would have sounded like this. My revenge wasn't making them pay me back. It was living well enough that I didn't need to be paid. The camera would pull wide, catching the lake in the background, the garden glowing, the sound of a child laughing somewhere off screen. Dignity, I whispered, is the sweetest kind of revenge. And then the light would fade, soft and slow, leaving just the hum of the Ford Lightning still charging quietly into the night. You know, people think revenge is loud. They think it's fire shouting, breaking things, but it's not. Real revenge, the kind that lasts, it's quiet. It's waking up every morning at peace with yourself. It's watching the people who once took you for granted finally understand the value of silence. I didn't win against anyone. I just stopped losing myself. Now I teach kids how to build something with their hands, because that's what saved me. You fix enough engines, you learn sometimes the hardest machine to repair is the human heart. Dignity, that's the sweetest kind of revenge.